Good morning, everyone. My name is Tracy Kimberg. I'm a relationship expert, and I'd like to invite you to day 4 of the challenge on how you can enhance your relationship by doing a couple of tweaks, a couple of strategies. Today is day 4, and we are going to talk about conflict resolution and effective problem solving. So get close. I think we all could do with some techniques and strategies on how to resolve conflict better and help our relationships feel stronger and more connected through doing it the right way. Let's get cracking. So, conflict resolution skills are a vital part of any healthy relationship. As you know, if we aren't able to resolve conflict starts building and resentment starts building, and we get into a vicious circle which looks something like this. If we start at the top right where it says tension, tension starts building in a relationship, which is normal. We all have issues, no relationship is perfect. As the tension builds, we start in the role of a dilemma where we start either blaming somebody else or blaming ourselves in that situation. Then we move further as tension builds even more. We start gathering injustices. We start kind of justifying our thought process. Then, once we feel in our heads we have enough information and we're ready to confront the person, we do that. We confront the person. But that's when we hopefully are able to resolve and communicate. But often, what happens is the adjusting phase is where the problem starts. People don't have the skills. Somebody might decide to ignore it and say, well, I'm just going to carry on and I'm out of here. I'm not going to get involved in this conflict situation. Or, if you're lucky enough, you might find a resolution together and start a new path to avoid the same tension and conflict again, which is here at the top, the resolution. Some people, unfortunately, get stuck in the fact that it hasn't been resolved and they start thinking negatively about the relationship. They get involved in thinking that there's other issues, other things that are annoying them, and they start the same cycle again where tension starts building, they regather information, they confront, and the adjustment doesn't happen in the right place. So, who of you gets stuck in this cycle when it comes to conflict resolution? I'm sure many of you can raise your hands and say, definitely, I experienced this in my life. So, let's look at some very helpful skills that you can put into how you resolve conflict and hopefully make a huge difference in how you and your partner resolve conflict. We're going to talk about active listening today. Active listening is exactly that. Listening is when you are not talking, but how do you incorporate active listening into your conflict resolution? Active listening means paying very, very close attention to what the speaker is saying and showing that you are engaging in the conversation. It also involves being fully present, both physically and mentally, so no distractions. In the conversation, you need to be focusing on the speaker's words and try and get out of your own head and try and not be thinking about your answer to what they're saying, but rather think about what they're saying, their tone of voice, and their body language. So you are actually an absorber and observer in that instance. It involves asking questions to clarify the speaker's meaning at the right time and demonstrating that you understand what they're saying. In a way to show empathy, I would suggest that It's important to show empathy when people are sharing what they're saying, but empathy also means the way that you show up also verbally, emotionally, and with your body language. So, show empathy by understanding, showing that you're trying to understand what the speaker is saying. And even if you don't agree with their perspective, it's important to show that you understand what they are actually saying. To practice active listening, please avoid interrupting, avoid distractions, and provide feedback that shows that you're listening closely, like nodding of the head and saying, Yes, I understand. Things like that. That shows that you're actually actively listening to the person. If you're on your phone or looking out the window or not really engaging, it doesn't really seem to the person in front of you that you are actively engaged. Examples of feedback, like I mentioned earlier, when you give feedback to what you're hearing, includes, like I said earlier, nodding, making eye contact, your facial expression might change, and then, of course, repeating back what they said in your own words, saying something like, So, what I understand from what you've said is, and repeating it back. Active listening can also be a very, very useful tool in many situations other than your intimate relationships. You can use it in any relationship, at work, with your amongst your friends, and it really helps build that deep connection that is needed to have healthy, strong relationships. So there we have it. Try and incorporate active listening by using these tools and strategies that I mentioned here today. The next point is creating the time and the place to have a conflict discussion. The time and place of a conflict resolution conversation and can significantly affect the outcome and the emotional impact it has on both parties. So it's one of the most key things to consider when you are arranging a discussion. Choose an appropriate time and place for the conversation and make it a comfortable setting for both people to speak openly and honestly. It's almost like you create the atmosphere just by choosing the right time and place, and that's a very good start. I would also suggest that you choose a neutral place. For instance, go to a public place, maybe go for a walk, but try not to do it in a place where the one person may feel that they are going to feel defensive or that their hostility is going to be triggered. So, it makes it easier for people to hear the person's perspective when they don't feel like the situation they are in is a threat. Also, consider scheduling the conversation at a time and place where you both feel most at ease and free from interruptions. So, make sure that you're not expecting phone calls, that the kids are not going to be knocking on the door every 5 minutes, and that you don't have to say, Well, I only have 5 minutes to have this conversation, so can we please get it over with? Make sure that you have enough time and that the place is appropriate. Then the next step is if you're not in the right space where you can fully engage and have this important conversation, where you might feel still a bit annoyed, where you notice that your partner is still triggered, it's important to also think about postponing the conversation a little bit and say, Look, I can see that you're not in the right headspace to have this conversation now. So, can we come back in 10 minutes and have this conversation? I'm still feeling quite triggered, and I know that I'm not going to be able to listen effectively. And be mindful of the time of day and avoid scheduling conversations when you're going to feel tired or hungry or exhausted after a hard day's work. And not before bed when you're both tired. But this is difficult, isn't it? Because, my mum always said to me, never go to bed angry. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard that before. And that, unfortunately, is when a lot of conversations are happening. between couples when they resolve conflicts and they try and sort it out before bed. But sometimes it's important to, if it's a preempted conversation, to try and schedule it at a time where you know that everybody's been fed, everybody's been to the loo, and everybody has had a good rest, and we can have this conversation. It's essential to approach the conversation with a curious mind. Instead of trying to make things right or prove that you're right, be curious to understand your partner. And I always say focus on a win-win here. It's not about who's right or a point scoring exercise. It's about how can we as a couple, how can our relationship needs to win from this discussion, and focus on that. Make sure that you also set clear boundaries and establish mutual agreed rules about the conversation. Like, how would you like the conversation to go? What is important for you when we have this conversation? And allow your partner to express how they feel and what they feel is important whilst having the conversation. And overall, it's about considering all these factors, putting them together, and trying to have a conversation where you are both feeling that you are able and willing to engage and be vulnerable and share what is bothering you so that you can get past this and grow as a couple. So let's get on with the next slide. The next slide, I'd like to discuss how you can use I statements in your difficult conversations or conflict conversations so that you can have yourself better understood by your partner. Oh, sorry, I've got a bit of a cough this morning. So, couples can use I statements very effectively to resolve conflict by acknowledging their feelings and their values, by saying I feel, I need, I want, I would like. I think it's important to remember that it's far better to use I feel than use the accusational type of term of you did, you said, you this, you that. I feel hurt when you said or you did ... rather than you hurt me when you ... I hope that makes sense. It's also important to take responsibility for one's own emotions and reactions by using I statements instead of playing this blame game that people often do. For instance, saying I feel instead of you made me feel is a way to really own your ownership of your own emotions and not make the other person feel responsible for your emotions. When expressing what's upsetting you, it's advised to also be very specific about the behavior rather than the person. So talk about the behavior that's annoying you and don't make the person feel that it's them that's annoying you. For instance, you can say, I feel upset when the dishes aren't done at the agreed time, or like you said you would do it, or instead of saying, you never do the dishes. So be more constructive with how you actually voice these conversations. In conflict resolution, the focus should be on resolving conflict rather than assigning blame. Couples can express their needs and desires for a resolution, rather using I feel statements, which can create a more constructive environment for finding solutions. And it also helps your partner really, like we talked about yesterday, understand that blank canvas of how you function and how you feel in certain situations. Remember, active listening is a crucial tool to resolve conflict. When your partner uses I statements and expresses how they feel, it really helps you to reflect back, because it is very exact at what they're feeling. So it helps you understand them better. And it's also important when you use I statements to look for compromises and solutions so that both partners' needs can be met. And finding that middle ground, like we said earlier, that win-win situation can really help um, the relationship and you as a couple resolve these conflict situations. Remember that the research done on I statements is so significant. And if you look at the research, it says that couples that are able to use effective I statements during conflict resolution actually have less arguments. So use your I statements and see how gradually the conflict situations that you have will become less explosive or less involved and less triggering for you because you are able to effectively express how you feel by using I feel. The next tip for today on conflict resolution is remember to find common ground and to really compromise, to be willing to compromise in the conflict situation. Compromising is such a crucial aspect of conflict resolution in relationships. And as we know, both partners need to find a middle ground to reach a type of a satisfactory zone. So then people feel that I didn't have to completely meet you there and you didn't have to come and meet me here. We met each other halfway. It creates that thing of us as a team. In conflicts, individuals may have different needs and desires and viewpoints, which is logical because we're all different. And compromising helps bridge these differences and helps partners feel like they're being understood and also helps partners feel that they are valued. It shows a willingness to work together when we find common ground. And it almost is a bit of a more balanced relationship where people don't feel like I'm the one that always has to compromise in this relationship. It feels more balanced, and people are more open to compromise when they feel that, well, my partner's always compromises, so I'm willing to compromise. Remember that compromising requires the skills that we've already discussed, like active listening and and empathy, as partners need to acknowledge and understand each other's needs and wants. So, it's about using those I messages clearly so that your partner is willing to understand you so that he's willing or she's willing to compromise. Remember, when we are willing to find common ground and compromise, it really cultivates this um, idea in your relationship of equality, which is what we all want in a relationships, to feel like we are equal partners in this partnership and that we are a team together. So it strengthens the bond and fosters a culture of cooperation and builds the foundation for a resilient and thriving relationship, which is what we all want. The last one that I'd like to discuss today is owning up. Um, Owning up to our wrongdoings, owning up to our own faults. It's so important and it's a crucial step to resolving conflicts. We all need to hear that our partner is willing to own up to their wrongdoings, if you want to call it that. It really helps bring that power balance within a relationship by ensuring that both partners have an equal say in the resolution process. When people are willing to own up and say, well, I apologize for this that I did, and the other partner says, I apologize for that I said. It demonstrates accountability, and it also demonstrates responsibility for your own actions. By admitting wrongdoings, individuals can create an environment where trust can be rebuilt and restored, and it shows a genuine commitment and transparency and honesty. So, there's nothing more frustrating when people aren't willing to own up. And it also breaks trust. So remember that this is very, very important part of building trust in any relationship. Owning up to one's action also allows for open and honest communication, creating a space for both partners to express their feelings, concerns, and needs. So it encourages that honest communication. It encourages a culture of personal growth and self reflection. And as individuals can learn from their mistakes and work towards a positive change of improvement, it really encourages people to really own up and say, you know what, I see my flaws, I see my faults here, and I'm going to try and work on them. By being open and being willing to express that you've own up to what you feel you did wrong, it definitely, reduces defensiveness, because people feel um, that they are willing to also be less defensive and and more vulnerable in a situation where their partner is saying, look, my bad, this is what I did wrong. Partners are more willing then to work together towards a resolution, and it sets this very positive example for your partner. The next time you have a disagreement, your partner might think, wow, I remember how my partner apologized last time, so I'm going to be willing to do the same. And this is how your relationship cultivates this culture of owning up and being very, very positive and focused on a resolution during conflict. When people own up, it definitely helps the forgiveness side of things as well. So it promotes forgiveness and healing. Sometimes a lot of us just need to hear that apology for us to be able to move on. We want the person to acknowledge that they did something wrong for us to be able to forgive. And until we've heard that apology or that owning up phase of the confrontation, it is a lot of the time very difficult for people to actually move past and forgive. And most importantly, owning up to what your wrongdoings are in a relationship really promotes this deep sense of within this couple of safety. Like, my emotions are safe with you, and I can acknowledge to you that I have faults, and you will still love me. So it's important to remember to own up to your wrongdoings. Oh. I'd like to leave you with this quote this morning, which says, conflict in relationships is not a sign of weakness, but an opportunity for growth and a much deeper connection. I hope you enjoyed today's day 4, talking about conflict resolution and problem solving, and that you found some value in it and that you can use this in your relationship. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you haven't seen the other 4 days or 3 days, then you can go back and watch them on my YouTube channel. And tomorrow is day 5, where we're going to discuss the power of active listening and empathy. If you need to get hold of me, then you can just scan this little barcode on the right. This is my WhatsApp link, and I can help you and answer any questions if you have any about your relationship and your ability or inability to resolve conflicts. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day, and see you tomorrow. Bye.